Hello and welcome to A Gypsy's Kiss, the book club. I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Stick with us a couple of seconds and we'll talk about Memoir for Me, Chapter 17, Part 5. We're getting through this thing.
And we're back. Please take a moment now to like this video with a thumbs up. Share it with your social media family and friends and let them know we're live right now and they can join in the chat. And then make sure you subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications whenever we go live or release a new video. Also, we have giveaways that are only for our subscribers, so we want you to subscribe so that you're eligible for those.
Wow, that was a nice little... We need you to be subscribing to be eligible for the giveaways. That was very good.
And now it's time for housekeeping. I'm going to thank our moderators, Jimmy Fast, Joe Lewicki, Jason Eunice, Brian Eagle, and Eric Schmidt. And I hope that we see you in the chat room today, gentlemen, to keep us safe and keep the conversation flowing. Our presentation today, once again, is about Chapter 17, My War for Me. And this will be the part I've called the Waterfall Graveyard. That's the fifth part of the Chapter 17. And we'll cover that today, and then we'll follow that up with an open Q&A. Anything you have in questions or comments about the book and the previous chapters, the current chapter, or anything else related to the Fenn treasure hunt, or whatever you'd like to talk about. It's completely open. And that will be followed by another giveaway. What do we have today?
So today's giveaway, I'm trying to push San Isidro. San Isidro is a patron saint of farmers, and we haven't been able to give him away because apparently the questions have been too difficult.
And look, he's praying for you.
We're going to give away two things. We're going to give away the laser cut of San Isidro, and we're going to give away one of Aunt Lucy's cookbooks. So I've got a good question for you today. So it'll be a lot of fun, I think.
All right.
And then for our wine today, we are drinking a Jacob's Creek Reserve. They're an Australian vintner. This is their Barossa, which is from the Shiraz grape. And so the only worry is that because it's a Shiraz, it might be high in tannin. So if it turns our teeth purple, just let us know. All right.
And to your military service?
And to Fenn's military service. And to the military service of all Americans who serve in the military. Yeah, high in tannins, but good. It would go good. This is another one of those bone-in ribeye wines. Bone-in ribeye and a big pile of garlic mashed potatoes.
Sounds good.
I have to clear my throat here.
All right.
May I have a drink of your tea? Just a little sip. Otherwise I'm going to be scratchy voiced all day. Thank you.
It's a mixture of green tea and black tea.
Okay, there was something going on there. I just wasn't sure what it was.
Green tea and black tea.
Okay, so we got open Q&A and giveaway. We're done with everything. So have I got any moderators in the room? Oh, I do. Eric Schmidt's in the room. And lots of people in the room already. Well, good. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. We'll talk to you later when we go to chat. So let's go through this section of... let me make one more transition here. Oh, so this is a picture of Shelley and I with our friend Michael Houle, who you should already know is from Tokyo, but he came through Albuquerque on his way to northern New Mexico, where he and his wife Helena were going to do some searching as well as some exploring of the area. Northern New Mexico offers a lot of opportunities for different things, from the pueblos to fishing. So they came through town and we had lunch with him. Helena didn't want to be on the photograph, but she made it into the photograph, as you can see right
And the reflection.
here. Her reflection is in the photograph. But they're really good people. And I just got an email from him this morning saying they're coming back through on Monday and wanted to get together again for lunch. And what was really funny is he was one of our first winners of our giveaways. And I keep forgetting to get it to him. He didn't want me to mail it to Tokyo. He said, we'll pick it up the next time we're down. So I've got to make sure I remember to do that. So, but it was nice seeing them, and it'll be nice to see them again. We had a very good lunch. And then... Okay, here we are. Forrest Fenn Memoirs Book Club, The Thrill of the Chase, My War for Me, Part 5 of 7. We've talked about this before, so it doesn't necessarily need repeating. This is the biggest chapter in the book. It takes up 20% of the book. So we decided to divide it up into some, what turned out to be very logical mini-chapters, sub-chapters, if you will. As Fenn writes it, it turns out that it's very... open, I guess, to the idea of cutting it up into chapters. He could have, if he wanted to write this section into his memoir in the form of chapters, he could have just written 7 additional chapters instead of the whole thing. So I'm not sure how he made that decision, and I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying that's the way it turned out. Okay, you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, you want to tell them the pages it's on?
Yes. So this is... The Thrill of the Chase, Chapter 17, Echo, My War for Me, Part 5, and these are pages 91 to 96. I should know better than to drink coffee just before a show.
You should know better. So Toby's going to be doing a lot of reading today. We included a lot of the chapter in this particular section because it intrigues so many of the searchers. And me as well.
Yeah, us included, right?
Yeah.
We think this is an important chapter because there's some things in here that are burned into Fenn's memory and could have been incorporated into his thinking in later years. We'll try to highlight those areas that interested us. Again, as usual, these are all our opinions and not meant to be some sort of rigorous thing you have to pay attention to. So listen to it, read the chapter if you haven't. If you don't have a book, this is, we feel like this is one of the most important sections in one of the most important chapters. Okay? All right, here we go. Page 91, paragraph 1. The next day, while climbing out in a C-130 and heading back to my home base at Twiwa, the pilot asked me if I wanted to talk with my wife. So we patched through Saigon, Guam, and Barry Goldwater and Scottsdale to Lubbock, Texas. Peggy and I spoke and said foolish things while everyone listened. She had received a telegram saying I had been shot down and no parachute had been seen. So 2 things. My mother, after I was wounded the first time, my mother received a telegram, and the way they deliver the telegram is it's actually delivered by a service person. And at the time, everyone knew that if somebody showed up at your house with a telegram, because that was the olden days version of text message, I guess, that it was not good news, generally speaking. But the telegram my mother received, as she saw them coming up the walkway, first into the driveway, she heard them drive up and then come up into the walkway and knock the door. And she asked my sister to answer the door, and my sister wouldn't because they both assumed it was bad news. And so that my mother finally went, and the service person, who I think was an Air Force officer from Kirtland Air Force Base, said it was a telegram from the United States Army. And she just thought the worst, and he stood there as if it was going to be the worst. And of course, I heard this story afterwards. And she opened the telegram, and it said something like, your son, Toby Eunice, and then it gave my serial number, which at that time, during that period, they were using Social Security numbers rather than actually military. They went back eventually to a military ID. And she read it, and she looked up at the guy, and she said, is he still alive? Because all it said had been wounded in action and would be returning home soon, and returning to the United States soon, which was not true because I had made a conscious decision to stay there. but her first question to the officer was whether or not I was wounded and still alive, or had been wounded and then died as a result of my wounds. So it was just kind of an interesting way, because I know there were parents and other relatives that suffered the arrival of that military car and a uniformed officer walking up with a telegram in hand. It must have been a very, not scary, but, depressing moment for them. So, and then he used the MARS system. The MARS system, MARS is a acronym for Military Auxiliary Radio System. And the way that it worked is it was a handshake agreement between the military and civilian ham radio operators all over the world. You could literally get all over the world. It turned out that Barry Goldwater, who was a Republican candidate for president at one time, was an avid ham radio operator, and so a lot of the messaging that went through the Southwest would actually go through his station, through his and I say station. These are guys operating in their basements, with the big antennas outside their homes, the wire antennas outside their homes. Well, the nearest one to me happened to be the head priest at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, and his name was Monsignor Rabbit. And so whenever, if you called, and I didn't make that many calls back home while I was there, but when you called, you eventually ended up with Monsignor Rabbit patching you through, and he would, the last patch was through the radio, and then it was connected to his phone, and he would have to literally dial, like back in the olden days, dial my mother, and there was no way to predict when this was all going to happen. And there's a big, I don't know if it's 12 hours, but when it's nighttime there, it's daytime here, and vice versa. So you had to schedule your visit to the Mars site at wherever you were going, and in this case, it was the air base at which Major Fenn flew out of at Bentui, and which was next, which held my the command center for the radio research unit in the Delta. And so I'd get up there pretty regularly, and I would try to schedule my Mars call. But the best one was my mother. The first year I was there, my mother decided to send me my favorite cake at the time was a yellow cake with chocolate icing, and so she decided she was going to send me a birthday cake. And after traveling through the system for, I don't know, probably a month and a half, by the time it arrived, it was inedible, for lack of a better way to describe it, and it was just one big inedible mess. Anyway, I thought I should call her and thank her, so I made an appointment with the Mars site at Kanto or Bintui, and was patched through. And I knew that the last patch was Monsignor Rabbit, and my mother had taught at Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I had gone to junior high school there, so I knew him, and he knew me, and we talked for a moment, and he gave me a blessing, his blessing to protect me, and eventually called my mother, and I started speaking to her, and of course she was very happy, and my mother, maybe I inherited this from her, all I got to say was, "Hi, Mom," and she launched, and she talked for, I don't know, 10 minutes straight, and it was her conversation interjected with questions that I would start to answer, and then she'd interrupt me, so I never got the answer out. And she asked me if the cake had arrived, and I said that it had. And she said, "Did you eat it?" And I said, "Yes, we had," which was true because we attempted to. She said, "Well, I'm glad. I hope you had a wonderful birthday party." And I was thinking to myself, yeah, we're out in the middle of a Firebase Alpha near Kamau. Yeah, we didn't have a birthday party. But it was just cute because of her kind of, I don't know, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Naive sense of what was going on and where we were, and the miracle of us being able to call. But I can tell you that a lot of soldiers that I knew, a lot of service people that I knew, lived for that time where they could make that Mars call back home. And it was important to them, and I think it was really important to their families. So this was an important call, especially after Peggy, after having received her telegram that said he had bailed out and that no parachute had been seen, because you always imagine the worst. And like I said, I think any family who saw that service person always in uniform, always in their dress uniform, walk up their driveway with that telegram, always expected the worst. So it was a difficult time for them as well, having to be at home waiting for their service person to come back, and of course 58,000 of them didn't. So it was difficult times for everyone, whether you were overseas and in combat, or whether you were waiting for someone to come home who was overseas and in combat. So, you have some follow-up analysis of that?
No,
sorry,
I left space for your story there.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
All right. When I was laughing, I made my eyes water. Okay, page 91, paragraph 2. When we landed at my home base in Twiwa, I told my boss that I didn't want to be shot down on my last mission and begged for one more, which was, not, I don't know necessarily it was heroic, but it was the kind of thing that you imagine Fenn would do. Every pilot's dread is to be shot down on his first mission or his last. And when the latter happened, it's a terrible bust on the morale of the remaining. A 4-star general in Saigon gave his blessing, saying, "But keep him in South Vietnam."
Well, I suppose that Fenn wanted to get back up on the horse before much time had passed, fearing a black mark would make it difficult to fly again when he finished his tour. Or this is just a fictional setup for the story that follows.
Yeah.
Which one?
I think it could balance out with either one. I think it's important to be able to tell that part of the story. And if you need a lead-in towards it, an introduction to it, this is a good lead-in. But it was not unusual for pilots, whether Army pilots, Army Air Corps pilots, or Air Force pilots, had they been shot down on their last mission, which was, like he said, everybody's dread, and survived to have it on their record that their last mission was a successful one. Being shot down was not necessarily a black mark, except in your own mind. Like, no, I'm not going to be shot down on my last mission, here. Page 91, paragraph 3. After the mission, it was time to pay my debt to the waterfall and the magic clearing to which I felt so obligated. You remember in the last section he talked about the waterfall that he could see down below him every time he pulled out of his his airstrip at Twiwa. After that mission, it was time for me to pay my debt to the waterfall and the magic clearing to which I felt so obligated. After some strong begging, an Army helicopter flying friend agreed to take me. It was about an hour's flight to where the little stream dropped so mistfully onto the rocks below. I thought that was a great word, mistfully.
Well, he made it up, but...
Yeah.
But it tells you. It's descriptive. So I thought that it would have had to have been some very strong begging indeed to go flying without orders in this wartime atmosphere, almost an hour in each direction just to visit a waterfall for 5 minutes. What do you think?
I think so. Pilots, especially those who had already performed their missions, were well into it. Fenn strikes me as the kind of man that, because he was a good pilot, drew respect. Right, a fighter pilot draws respect just for being a fighter pilot. There's only, 2,000 of them in the entire world. So they draw respect, and I think he was the kind of guy that was so softly spoken. He didn't strike me as an arrogant kind of guy. He struck me as the kind of guy that was, like Chuck Yeager, the Chuck Yeager character in, what was that movie?
The Right Stuff.
The Right Stuff. Yeah, they picked Sam Shepard to play the Chuck Yeager, and he played it perfectly. He played it that aw shucks kind of Texas accent. Although I discovered that all fighter pilots, whether they're from Texas or not, speak with a Texas accent when they're on the radio. Anyway, So I think he was that kind of aw shucks kind of fighter pilot, and I think that endeared him to a lot of other people that he had to work with. He was humble. He was always grateful, and I think if he were to ask someone to do this for him, they would cite all the regulations and all the reasons that they shouldn't be doing it. You know, that they wouldn't be doing it, that they couldn't do it, and then they'd do it. They'd find a way. And so, yeah, it was a lot to ask. It was a waste in time, a waste in fuel, a waste in manpower. You know, each of those helicopters, the helicopters as they operate in Vietnam and probably in Afghanistan and Iraq, they required 16 man-hours worth of service for every 1 hour of flight time.
Wow.
And so the whole time they were on the ground, they were being serviced by this amazing flight crew to make sure it did its job and came back safely every time. So it was a lot to ask. It was an expense in time, money, and manpower. And so you had to figure out how to do it, you know, whether it was an excuse for doing something else. Sometimes they used them for supply drops or other things. And so you could fit something like this in there. But to land in what, you know, you have to remember, anytime you were out of the cities in Vietnam, you were effectively in what you had to believe was communist-held territory, Vietnamese communist-held territory. So there were no places outside the cities that were perfectly safe. You know, I mean, we were at a fire base down at Cronauer, and 5 kilometers outside of that fire base, it belonged to the VC. And so there was that had to be dealt with because you could have lost that aircraft. Mm-hmm. And that's the aircraft that is used to recover downed fighter pilots. And fighter pilots are, as far as the Air Force is concerned, more valuable than the aircraft they fly. So there was a lot going on there, and he had to, and probably because he was short, because he was, you know, one mission away or had just flown his last mission, they figured out how to do it, but he was asking a lot. You know. Page 91, paragraph 4. When we landed, the geography looked much different what I expected. I'm sorry. When we landed, you know what? I don't like these new bifocals.
Just discovered that.
Yeah. When we landed, the geography looked much different from what I expected and from what I had seen a mile up. The small clearing was now about 300 feet across, and belly-high grass made walking difficult. It was impersonal and disappointing. I was embarrassed and felt foolish for making such a big deal out of something that now seemed so whimsical. Besides, this was enemy country, and although it seemed remote, we didn't know who might be nearby. Helicopters make a lot of noise, so we agreed to stay only 5 minutes. Which is, by the way, what you're going to discover when you go out on your first recon, the difference between what you see on Google Earth, which is actually higher than 5 miles, but they use cameras to correct for that, and what you see once you get boots on the ground is like night and day. So you experience that.
Okay. Yeah, this story seems so embellished that I wonder if it isn't there just to indicate what the area where the treasure is hidden might look like. Searchers new to an area all recognize the feeling that the geography looked much different from what I expected. Fenn may have seen his special place initially from a mile up while flying over it in his own plane.
So your reference there is to the present day, right?
In his own plane,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's a conclusion we've come to. So the story has a place in terms of his service and his time in Vietnam, but it's so detailed. I guess Shelley uses the word embellished, but I think it's so detailed. There has to be a reason why there's so much detail. And so we started wondering as we read this particular chapter if he wasn't giving us some of the things that, as he hid the treasure, and in that sense, they're not hints. They're simply indications of some of the experiences he had and how he describes them that migrated their way into the process of him hiding the treasure, which took that process, the process of going through all this decision making about hiding the treasure, took years, from 1988 on through possibly 2010. But you know, one of the things that we've evaluated and honestly supports our current solution is that, could you have seen something like this from the air as you passed over it? And we know that he tells stories about his travels, both in writing and in speaking, that he used to fly his aircraft out of Santa Fe north without a particular, you know, exact heading or just a general direction, and he would fly low so that he could see things. So what Shelley is proposing with her comment is it possible that Fenn saw, maybe not specifically his special place, but a place where his special place could be, and because of that waterfall, it had that association from his time in the service. So we look at these things and try not to call them clues or hints, but could it have influenced his later thinking or his thinking in later years? Page 91, paragraph 5. After sitting on the edge of the waterfall and throwing rocks over the drop, the pilot said, "Let's go." The sound of the rushing water was stronger than the noise of the idling engine, and I was a little uncomfortable with the whole episode. As we rose and started walking in the tall grass towards the helicopter, a strange chain of events began to unfold. And I love this paragraph. A strange chain of events began to unfold. I tripped over something and fell flat on my face. That never happens to me. Then, when I started to push myself up, I came nose to nose with a rude aluminum grave marker. How strange and out of place it seemed.
Although they were only staying 5 minutes, Fenn had time to look around, throw rocks over the edge of the falls, and discover an aluminum grave marker. This story seems forced, as if inserted to point us toward a similar scene with a rude aluminum marker in tall grass near a waterfall.
Does it have to be aluminum?
It's only aluminum there. Aluminum. It's
Aluminum.
only aluminum there, and then it turns to stone next.
Okay, page 94, paragraph 2. I could barely read the dirty nameplate, but did make out the name of a French soldier. Then suddenly we saw more grave markers. The more we looked, the more we found. These soldiers had evidently been killed during the French Indochina War in 1947. Actually, the French Indochina War lasted until 1952. But I had tripped over a crudely made stone grave marker that had fallen face down in the grass. So what I think I want to say is that he tripped over a stone grave marker and fell flat on his face. And that as he came up, the aluminum grave marker was before him. So the question is, why were all the other grave markers stone and this one aluminum?
I don't know how that got in there.
Okay. Pilot, let's see. Crudely made stone grave that had fallen. I had tripped over a crudely made stone grave marker that had fallen face down in the grass. Before I could roll it over to see what it said, the pilot was strapping in. I had to hurry. A French name and rank was followed by arcing English words across the top. If you should ever think of me when I have passed this veil and wish to please my ghost, forgive a sinner and smile at a homely girl.
So are the grave markers stone or aluminum? I'm confused. And for being in such a hurry, he remembered all the words written on this grave marker that he tripped over. Why would this quote be on a French grave? And then from Wikipedia, H.L. Mencken died in his sleep on January 29, 1956. He was interred in Baltimore's Loudon Park Cemetery, though it does not appear on his tombstone. During his Smart Set days in which is a magazine that Mencken was the editor of, concerning the elite in New York. Mencken wrote a joking epitaph for himself. that went this way. If after I depart this vale you ever remember me and have thought to please my ghost, forgive some sinner and wink your eye at some homely girl. So is this just another embellishment, or is any of this story true? Is this smart set epitaph a tip of the hat to those in the know?
Page 94, paragraph 3. Those words burned in my brain, and I can see them just as clearly now as I did then, when I was so rushed. I took care to replace the stone marker as it had fallen, and smooth the grass to hide it over. The promise that place had made to me had been kept, and mine to tell as well. Mine to it as well.
So that invoked in me a vision of when he talks about smoothing the grass over. It just reminds me of somebody smoothing somebody's hair back as they're dying. Okay, that's what I got. Came into my head when I was reading this. But what promise was made and kept by this place? Does this refer to Fenn's special place and the promise made and kept to hide the treasure there?
So in order for it to have been if what Fenn did was collect all the metaphors as a result of this event and make a story from it, right? So let's say that there was a waterfall, there was a helicopter ride, there was a set of grave markers, etc., etc., and then embellished in order to substantiate what he did in later years. So here's the thing: those metaphors for what he experienced have to be. So what he had to do was find a location where those metaphors would be substantiated, not by the location, but by the finder. In other words, the expectation is that somehow or the other, the finder would experience, the finder of the treasure, in finding the treasure, would experience some of these same metaphorical events, these moments of recognition and realization. Maybe not the same thing in terms of gravestones or pieces of aluminum, but that the finder would be experiencing these things in the same way that he did. Okay. Page 94. Paragraph 4. How innocent and foolish all of that seemed at the time, and even more so that a strangely insidious something began to gnaw at me. This could not be the end of it. There was no feeling of closure at all, no sense of completeness. It was disappointing until...
Until?
Go ahead. I'll let you say what you're going to say, and then, because it sounds like you already said what I'm thinking.
Oh. So is Fenn describing hiding the treasure and walking away without having thrown himself down upon the chest to die? Did hiding the treasure in this way feel incomplete after he had planned to end his life there as well when he was sick?
So he walked away from that. So it's his last mission. His next flight is the flight home.
Mm-hmm.
He walked away from that. There was no feeling of closure at all, no sense of completeness. It was disappointing. That had to gnaw at him.
Well, the Vietnam War was disappointing for everybody.
Right. But at what point do you complete that, where you release yourself of that disappointment? And I'm wondering if that moment at which we described in Monday's show where we didn't talk about the psychological part of this. Perhaps we need to go back and look at that in terms of the need to complete this.
Well, the hero's journey, the hero returns home and shares what he's learned or what he's found with other people. And that's what he does when he writes this story.
Page 96, paragraph 2. You need to read this chapter. You need to read this section. What were those pages?
91 through 96.
91 through 96. I'm starting to think this has... I've read this and I've considered it, but it's starting to feel more relevant to me. Page 96, paragraph 2. Why did the strange clearing mean so much to me? Oh, he's asking his own questions to ponder.
Right.
Why did the strange clearing mean so much to me? Why did I survive 328 combat missions but get shot down twice? Was it only to be drawn to that place? What kind of fool would take a defenseless helicopter to that waterfall? It was more than strange that I would fall to the ground and read such a poignant inscription.
Poignant. There you go.
It was more than strange that I would fall to the ground and read such a poignant description. And why did the words impact me so?
Shall I read the questions to ponder?
Yeah.
Okay. There are many inconsistencies and difficulties in believing this particular story is true. And if it is not true, but contrived, what is Fenn trying to tell us here? Does this grassy graveyard near the waterfall symbolize where Fenn would have chosen to die had he been ready to do so when he hid the treasure? Does his special place resemble this picture drawn for our benefit?
It certainly has to have some commonalities, don't you think?
Well, how real do you think the story is? How much of it do you think is true?
85 and 15, that's what he's always said.
So you think 85% of it is actually true?
Every story, for a good storyteller, for a good script writer, a screenplay writer, you know that there's a part of the story that has to be real in order to make the story real. And then it is embellished. And I think it certainly, from my experience in the service and the time I spent in Vietnam, all of what he describes is plausible. Difficult, but plausible. And how he describes it makes it plausible. Is it embellished? Likely. You would have to. But more importantly, why is this story told? Why is this story told? And why is it told in this way? Is the question that needs an answer. Okay, no furrow brows.
It feels like a dream to me. Like one of your dreams you have.
Oh.
Where, you know, the helicopter's leaving. Hurry up. You
Yeah,
gotta get on it,
Yeah.
and let's get going. Oh, I tripped. I can't get there, you know. Isn't that how dreams go? There's always that obstacle that gets in your way. And you're trying to get somewhere and do something.
All right, you ready to go to chat? Okay, so we're going to go to chat now, open chat, and go through the list of things that have already been asked. If you have a question for us, make sure you start the question with @ a Gypsy's Kiss so that we know it's for us and that you're just not having a conversation with the members of the chat room. And if you'd like your chat to be highlighted, you can scroll down to the bottom of the screen, look for the super chat icon, which has a ringing bell associated with it. And click on the icon. That has the effect of highlighting your question and moving it to the top of the queue. And oh, by the way, last night we got an early chat, or a super chat, from William Ortiz. And I don't know if he's in the room. I haven't looked at it yet. But William, so for some reason, that literally did not show up on our screens last night. And I know it was a serious question. and that you wanted an answer and that you paid for Super Chat to get it. And I apologize for us not noticing it and getting to it. But I've written the question down, and what I will do next time we have a panel where we have 6 people in the room, I will ask them your question for you. So I apologize for not having noticed it for however...
It didn't actually pop up on the screen until after the show was over.
After the show, right. That's when we
And then when you go
it.
back to watch the video, it's the first thing on the screen.
Right.
So I don't know what happened there. I blame YouTube. Because it just didn't show up until we had just finished the stream and we were talking to each other on Zoom, and then all of a sudden it popped up and I was like, uh-oh, here's what William was talking about. So we'll definitely get to it at the next panel.
Panel. So like I said, we've written it down.
That might even be the topic of the next panel, so because it was such a good...
It was a good question.
Thorough question.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll do that. So William, when you see this, please, we're sorry we missed it, but it wasn't intentional. Okay, I'm going to go back to full screen and make this change right here. And okay, and let me bring up your chat.
All right. There's a new name. Lots of new names.
Project Penumbra started off bad.
Apparently.
Sorry, Project Penumbra. Apparently.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric, for taking care of that.
Dave Erickson is has saying hello. Hello. Shane McLaughlin is here. Brent from Austin, Texas. Eagle Pixel.
It's Brian. Pixel? That's Brian's business account.
Okay.
Hey, Brian.
Can't switch out of his business account. Okay. Journeyman's here. Eric Schmidt. Hello. Jono Jones. Hi from UK.
The UK.
Mitzi Moore TV. Hey.
Jonah will be here in August.
She's being good.
How beautiful Shelley looks today. We like the word. I used to have a girlfriend, and she had certain words that she mispronounced, but she happened to be a director at FEMA. And I came to the conclusion that when she mispronounced those words, everybody thought she's so smart and articulate, she must be pronouncing them correctly.
Or just was trying to be cute.
Right. And she was what I would call voluptuous, but she called herself voluptuous, which I thought was a cute way to describe it. Anyway, I think
look at that.
I'm going to do it from here. John Bobbitt. Hey, John Bobbitt. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're always very kind today, and I don't see a question, so...
So if we see something coming up in the chat later, we'll make sure we talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Jono Jones, Too Far to Walk, arrived from the U.S. this morning. I'm halfway through, not spotted anything yet. Help.
Oh, okay.
Help.
Too Far to Walk arrived.
You got the book.
Spotted anything? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a big book. See, that's, I think, I don't know whether I made a comment last week, but I think that book, Too Far to Walk, was the actual Forrest Fenn memoir. I think we're actually going to talk about that in one of our upcoming shows.
Yeah. We're going to steal some ideas from Michael Hoole.
Yeah, exactly.
But we told him we were stealing them, so he said that was okay.
Mitzi Moore. I'd be good, so I won't mention it.
23 Monarcha and
23
Rick
Monarcha.
Plank
That's
from,
DeCall's friend.
Oh, Rick Plank from Cincinnati is here. Jeremy Milstead. Jeep Girl Jody.
Hey, Jody.
Cheers to Eric. Let's see. Jackie Naden from England.
Hi, Jackie. New name, well, not a new location. You're amongst good company in Jono, and was Adam Foddy in? We have several folks from the UK. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, Cindy Guess is here.
Or in your case, this evening.
And JT from Houston. And Matt. And I'm at the bottom.
All right, let's see if we can do this without...
Matt. There you go.
Right there.
Ron Leek. Sweet leg.
Sweet.
Not sure what that means.
Legs. I don't know. Can you see my legs?
Oh, I think he meant in the picture. I was wearing a dress.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Thanks. I guess he meant mine. I'm going to guess. Could have been either you or Michael, too.
Well, Michael was wearing jeans. I was wearing shorts.
Oh, okay.
Cargo shorts. Dad like cargo
Dad shorts.
Dad shorts.
Finally got too far to walk. Not long till a trip out there. That's right. Jono's coming next month, right?
Next month, yeah. August. He'll be here with his family.
Yeah. Chad Maxwell is here. John Bobbitt retracted his message. Toby, we may have had the same mother send packages.
Yeah, that's kind of what they did. I think for the remainder of my time there, which in total was 2 years, I think I got one more package, and it contained bathroom sundries. It was just, she was so funny. I had a funny mother.
And she also talked over him as well. David Dow is here late, but here. Anyone think the waterfall was made up, says Matt?
I think it's I think I mentioned last week that that in Vietnam we experienced 4 seasons: dry, wet, and dry and wet. And when it was dry, it was very, very dry. And when it was wet, it was raining. The monsoons, it was raining every day. And so those streams would fill, the water pockets would fill, and the streams would rise and expand, and the waterfalls would, what had been a trickle, over a rock face during the dry season was now a full-blown misting waterfall. So yeah, it's perfectly possible that he would have seen it even down in the delta, which tends to be flatter than the rest of the country. Although the area over to the west of the delta, where the Seven Sisters were, was mountainous. But if you look at them, they're not even real, even Appalachian mountains. They're just kind of bumps in the land, for lack of a better way to describe them.
Joe Mazzocco from Colorado.
Colorado.
Yeah. Little girl from India is here. Namaste.
What is
from Mumbai?
Speaking of communism, how about
Ocasio-Cortez?
Okay, I don't know what you're talking about. I guess because I mentioned the Vietnamese communists, the VC, Victor Charlie, or as Drill Sergeant Burke used to say, Charlie.
And Mark Connor is here.
LGF, the little girl from India. It's a little girl in India. That's why.
In lotus position.
No.
Smart set. John O'Jones, Too Far to Walk book. Quote, I warned that the path would not be direct for those who had no certainty of the location beforehand, but sure for the one who did.
That particular phrase, I won't say those particular words, he's used that description of the accuracy of your solution more than once. And the conclusion we've come to is that it's like the lottery. You buy a lottery ticket, you have the choice of picking your own numbers or letting a machine pick the numbers for you, and you don't know whether you're right or wrong until all 6 numbers are drawn. And it takes all 6 numbers, because at any point in time you could be completely with the draw of one ball, it could be completely wrong. I'm going to be writing a blog post on that over the weekend.
Well, he says, I think that means that you do need to get to the 8th clue from home. Then the blaze positioning with boots on the ground.
Okay, we're going to have this conversation when you get back from your first boots on the ground.
Yeah.
As we say to almost everybody. Oh, I lost it. Okay, right there.
Yep.
Okay.
Matt says, I read somewhere that Epitaph can be traced to France on a blog. I never was able to confirm that. Had anyone else seen it was French?
No, as Shelley cited, it's
H.L.
Mencken.
He was the editor of a couple of magazines in New York, and this one he wrote an epitaph for himself in Smart Set magazine, and that was in the early to mid 1900s, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
Certainly before the French Indochina War.
Yeah. Eric wonders if you had an epiphany.
I had a moment, didn't I, Eric? Yeah. We're going to have to go back and look at this a little bit more. See how well Eric knows me? Wow,
He does.
That's pretty good.
He does. That's right. That's because he's always here. He's very loyal. Steve Rempel, I feel it's a hint how the chest is hidden, tall grass smoothed over. It's strange he was in such a hurry to replace the marker and smooth the grass back over it.
Steve, I don't know, perhaps you're having an epiphany similar to mine, but there was something different about my reading of it today. Not in the way that not what was written or the way that I read it, but there were some things that struck me in reading it aloud today that I hadn't. And I think Eric's mention of an epiphany, a moment of epiphany, may be correct. I'm going to have to go back and do some more detailed research. There's some things that we had already used in our solution from this particular chapter, but I think I need to go back and do some more in-depth analysis, which I may or may not share with you.
Saffron is here.
Hey, Saffron.
Mark Connor says, I guess Yellowstone is closed. Does anybody know anything about that?
I don't know, Mark. I hadn't heard that. Why would it be closed? Are there fires? They haven't had a problem with moisture. So I don't know. Anybody else know about that? Where's Mary Green when we need her?
John Bobbitt says, I enjoyed your read about where Forrest Fenn hid it. It accurately depicts my solve, but I haven't dragged my backpack in yet, but I will next month.
Well, good. And I'm glad that it was familiar to you in that way, John Bobbitt.
Jeep Girl Jody says, I think Fenn is appreciating these French soldiers, and it is real personal to him, but he uses the inscription and experience to push forward.
So most people don't know a great deal about the history of the Vietnam War, but the Vietnam War basically started after the end of World War II as communism was expanding out of China and into other countries. And of course, Ho Chi Minh was a Vietnamese communist, although he thought of himself as not necessarily a communist, but a revolutionary, right? He was tired of the French landowners running the country effectively by fixing the elections for politicians that would support the French landowners. So it was a colony of France at the time, and that continued through the 1950s as the revolution, the communist revolution, started expanding into the South and getting more and more combative. Because at first it was just kind of a popular movement, expanded into military movement later on. But the point that you're making there is one of the things about being in Vietnam is once you're there, you realize that this history preceded your arrival there. But you always look at your time in Vietnam in the context of your time in Vietnam and what you did while you were there. But as you study the history of it, you realize that there were soldiers there before you. I remember the last time I was leaving Vietnam. I was going through Tan Son Nhut Air Base in Bien Hoa above Saigon, and everything was packed and shipped, and I was waiting waiting for my flight to depart, and it was a military flight. At this time, they were using civilian aircraft to fly military back and forth to Vietnam under contract. But I was waiting, and I went into the shop. You know, what do they call them? The little stores that are in airports, the gift shop. And there was a book rack, and I went to look for a book that I might be able to read with me on the aircraft. And one of the things that I found there was a Vietnamese-German dictionary. And I thought, Vietnamese-German, why? And so I spoke Vietnamese, and I went to the gift shop desk, and there was a young woman behind the desk, and I joked with her, and I said, why Vietnamese-German? And she said, First, I won't do her accent. First Chinese, then Japanese, then French, then American, next Germans. And she said it in such a pragmatic way, I feel like she believed it. That nation had been at war. That peninsula had effectively been at war for 1,000 years, on and off, because it was so important. It was on the South China Sea. And it had been in modern war since the end of World War I with all these invading entities, some of whom stayed there, and in this case, the French. And her conclusion was that every other country had been there already, who's left but the French and perhaps the Russians. But that was the sense of the people of this peninsula. They never saw an end to this kind of war, and probably didn't until the peace accord in 1970. What was it, 75? And then they became a communist nation for anyone who has returned to Vietnam because of its wealth of resources. It is, it's still a classed country. There are three very distinct classes with a very rich upper class, but there's a very strong middle class that handles the management and the exploitation in a good way of their assets. And so it's grown and it's gotten very popular. It's Ca Mau, south of Ca Mau towards the South China Sea, which was home to a fire base and a village, is now a port and a big tourist area with hotels and beaches. So they've expanded and they've changed and leveraged what they had in terms of resources and assets.
Matt says, what is special about the epitaph? It seems meh to me.
Other than it was written by a famous writer.
And we try to point those things out when we come across them, that actually is a quote from somebody else and where it's from, just so if people are interested in delving into that for themselves. Let's see, David Dow, is it relevant after you... Oh, it is relevant after you read the Philadelphia incident, and when he finds his special place gives meaning to all of it. I think he's referring to when Fenn was flying over Philadelphia.
And he covered it with his finger, yeah. Yeah, we have a kind of different perspective of that, but we'll share it. I think it's next week, isn't it?
I don't know. I haven't sneaked ahead. You want to read Deborah's?
Deborah Lindsay in a documentary, the documentary Brothels of the Wild West, said that most of the girls that worked in the brothels were actually homely girls. I don't know how they know that, because there are photographs of that period. So I don't know how much I want to. So
they had less chance of getting a husband, I guess. So they took what they could get.
If you go to the Wild West, where the man to woman ratio was 10 to 1, you were more likely to find yourself a husband regardless of what you look like. And so my experience, not that I hung out in brothels, but there was a red light district in Canton, which is in the biggest city in the Delta. It was called Ben Samoy. And so every once in a while I'd make it up there just to get a beer and take a look at the homely girls. What you discovered is none of the girls there were very homely. They were all very attractive. And the ones that were most appealing, the most popular, were the ones... Can I tell a story here?
Yeah, do it.
Okay. So Ben Samoy was in Canton. It was the red light district. And it was relatively safe because all it had was these bars that were populated with bar girls who would proposition you, and you'd make a decision about what you do. The most attractive...
How did they say it?
Ben Samoy.
Boom boom?
Oh, boom boom, yeah. You want to boom boom 500 P? And if you refuse, they'd say, oh, you're number 10 GI. You're number 10. I number 1 girl, you're number 10 GI. I'm not going to do bad imitations of Vietnamese. But the most popular were those women who were Eurasian, were half French. And the Americans had been there long enough. Well, maybe that's not true. Maybe it was the French. That these women had grown. They were over 21 because they were working in the bars. They might have been 18. But I was younger, of course, and far more charming. And I used to go in to the places, and the Vietnamese are very superstitious. They believe in the metaphysical and the mystical. And what I discovered is that although I could talk my way into a conversation, because in order to get a conversation you had to buy drinks, and you paid, it was probably just water, and it was 10 times what a normal drink would you pay, but that's how you supported them. And then the conversation might change and you might go further. Anyway, what I discovered was that they love this mystical component. And so I don't know whether I mentioned to you, but my dad once said, not to me because I was too young, he died when I was 11, but I heard him say to someone else, all you need to get through life is one good song on the guitar or piano, one good joke, and one good card trick. And so I taught myself a really good card trick. And they love gambling of all kinds. So you could always find a card deck in one of these bars because they entertained themselves when they weren't hustling the soldiers. They entertained themselves by playing cards. They had these various games that they played. Anyway, I had this one good card trick, and so I would ask her if she had some cards, and she'd go get them, and I'd do this card trick. And that was enough to raise me to the status of Merlin the magician, the wizard, you know. It was magical at that point, and they were crazy about me. And so I'd play it for all it was worth and get a lot of attention from it, and then I'd show it to one, and then I spoke Vietnamese, and I didn't let them know that I spoke Vietnamese, so they would tell the other girls to come over and say, oh, you got to watch this guy. He has magic hands. That was their big thing. He has magic hands. And so I did that. And at some point, I started attracting this one very attractive, half French, half Vietnamese woman. And so we were entertaining each other with conversation and drinks, et cetera, et cetera. And at some point, her real American boyfriend walks up. And her real American boyfriend, I don't think he was a SEAL. I think he was a CB. He was Navy. He was wearing a black beret, I remember that. And he was the size of an NFL lineman. He was just huge. And I was no taller than I was now, and I was 80 pounds lighter. I was pretty lithe at the time, but there was no way that I was going to, fight this guy over this girl, nor did I want to. And so he came up, and he was very polite. And he said something like, well, excuse me, you're sitting with my girlfriend. And I looked up at him like that, and I said, you're right, and I'm going to move away. And she started yelling at him, saying, no, you're not. This is my new boyfriend. He has magic hands, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm thinking to myself, yikes. I am going to get killed here. And you couldn't carry weapons. You couldn't carry your weapons in Bensonhurst. There was no long weapons, although some of us stuck a pistol on the back of our jungle fatigues. But I thought, this is going to be bad. This guy is just going to wipe this bar clean with me. Anyway, so he looked at her, and he gave her just the saddest look, and he went over and he sat at another, what are they called? Not table. What's the opposite of a table when we go there? Booth. And there were some other bar girls there, and he kind of entertained, but he kept looking over at us, and I knew this was not going to turn out good. Well, at some point, I felt so bad and so guilty and kind of so worried that this guy was going to follow me out and just choke me that I went over and I started buying him a drink. And at some point, I did the card trick for him, and I showed him how magical it wasn't, but it looked like it was really magical. So he was very grateful for that. We started buying drinks. Eventually we got pretty drunk, and sometime during the night we exchanged berets. I was wearing the Arvin Ranger red beret, and he was wearing the CB's black beret. And the difference was that his black beret was designed for his head, and my Ranger beret was designed for my head. So it was about half the size. I don't know what it was. Anyway, when we exchanged berets, my beret kind of sat on the top of the back of his head like a yarmulke, and his beret came down to my ears. Like I looked like a little boy with a beret on, with a black beret on. Anyway, we decided, to heck with this, let's go find some other bars. And so we went looking for another bar, and at some point, so these areas were all patrolled by the various services versions of military police. In the case of the Army, it's the MP, military police. The Navy's version of that was there. The Air Force's version of that was there. But they were always patrolling, making sure everything was cool and people weren't killing each other. And in case every once in a while you'd hear an explosion, the VC had tossed a really bad mortar round into the area. Anyway, they stopped us and started to talk to us, question us about being out of uniform. And of course, we were both drunk, and we were being wise guys. And that's the worst thing that you can do to these guys. And telling them how they had such a miserable job and what they needed to do was get out into the field, and just making fun of them. Well, at some point, it was obvious to me that they were going to arrest us and take us in. And that's not good, because that could result in various charges from an Article 15 all the way up to, expulsion from the services. Anyway, jungle fatigues are very baggy, and they have these baggy pockets. And I had an M40 hand grenade in one of those pockets. Not sure why it was there, not sure why I had it, didn't plan to use it, but it was there. So I took it out of my pocket and I pretended to pull the pin, and it was such a pretend, I went ping, just like that. I made the sound, and I rolled it under their Jeep and yelled grenade. And everybody gets as far away from you can as the perceived danger, and you hit the ground, because the way a grenade explodes kind of up. And so they hit the ground, and my new buddy, the CB, hit the ground. I grabbed him by the collar, and we started to run. Unfortunately, we were both drunk as skunks, and within 100 yards, we were both, for lack of a better way to describe it, puking up our guts. And the MPs caught us. And what they do when they catch you is they put you in what they refer to as a cell. Well, the cell is a metal connex. I don't know if you know what a connex is. It's a shipping container. And they had welded out, they had cut windows and doors and all this in it. And they had manacles on chains welded to the bottom of the connex. And they were shorter. You couldn't stand up, so you had to sit down. But what they would do, so that you were no danger apparently to yourself, is they would make you take off all your clothes except, and forgive me, Mitzi, your tidy whities. So you're sitting there in a connex in the country that has the highest population of mosquitoes who eat white people in the world, and they're just eating us alive. And we're still kind of both drunk, and he's yelling at me in the connex. He said, "It was a great night, bro. It was a great night. Thanks for the card trick. Thanks. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use a card trick." Anyway, what they do is they call your commanding officer, and he has to come up. And this guy had to come from Canto, from the officers' quarters at Canto to come and get me. He put me in a room overnight in the officer's quarter and sent me back out into the field the following day. I didn't even get an Article 15. He just advised me.
No, you got malaria.
Yeah, well, and that was the night I acquired malaria. So from all those damn mosquitoes. Anyway, I never saw that CB again. I never, had a reason to, but it was one of those nights that kind of described the idiosyncrasy of Vietnam, where on one day, you could be in combat and scared as hell for your life and your well-being, and the next day getting drunk with a CB and getting some MPs mad at you. So I'm not sure why I told that story. Oh, the brothels. That's what. They weren't exactly brothels. They were bars that had, places behind them. I guess they weren't like intentionally brothels. They called them bar girls. So, but they were fun. They all spoke, various forms of bad English, and
and mixed in with a little French, I guess.
Yeah, there was always a little French.
I love you beaucoup, you love me titi.
Yeah, exactly. See, this is what happens when you hang around with the same person for 6 years. They start picking up on this. So it was interesting. It was a lot of fun, and if I had to do it again, I would.
All right. And he did get malaria.
And I did get malaria from that night.
Yes, Rick, we skipped page 95. There's pictures. You want to show them the pictures?
Oh, yeah. We did. Rick, that was... It kind of didn't fit in. What Rick is talking about are these pages right here. We didn't intentionally skip them. They were just not in the text. But I wanted to read the text to you. These are pictures of him returning from that from being picked up after his last...
in the Jolly Green Giant with the rescue crew. Right.
So he writes, after being hoisted out of the Laotian jungle and returned to friendly territory at Nakhon Phanom, Thailand, it was time to give some thanks. He still would have to get from Thailand back to Bentui, which is where he was flying out of. It was time to give some thanks. And the center is Lieutenant Colonel John Carlson, who led a flight of 4 fighters and strafed around my position on the ground to keep enemy heads down. The helicopter pilot, Lieutenant Commander Lance Egan, shakes my hand while we all grin and rehash the rescue mission. They showed their strength when I needed it the most. How do you thank guys like that? I've always liked it I've always wondered whenever Fenn finishes something by asking a question, whether or not he wants us to answer it, and whether or not the answer should help us in some way. How did the olive jar? The quote survivor unquote on the left, open parentheses me, close parentheses, and the men who extracted me from the deep jungle in Laos. They are all heroes many times over, as is the Jolly Green Giant helicopter behind it. Her name is Candy Ann. From left to right, Lieutenant Colonel John Carlson, Sandy Lead, Lieutenant James Jamerson, Sandy 4. Sandy was their code name. Lieutenant Colonel John H.I. Morse, commander of the rescue unit and co-pilot of the Candy Ann. Airman First Class Robert J. Sully, the parachute jumper who pulled me into the helicopter. Lieutenant Commander Lance Egan, pilot of the Candy Ann. And Flight Engineer Master Sergeant Lee R. Maples, who had his hand on the cable cutter. And that's the guy who remained in the helicopter as the parachute jumper, the rescue jumper would go down on a wire cable to recover the fallen pilot, the downed pilot. And should they run into trouble, his job was to cut the cable and let them fall back into the jungle, saving the Jolly Green Giant in the process. So he was very respectful. Those two are the largest captions in the book. And so I think that's just a continuation of the value and importance of this chapter to Fenn and how important it was for him to express it in
Plus,
this.
there was a news crew there, so of course they had, quality pictures that were archived, so they could get hold of them.
The Air Force treated fighter pilots as literally their most valuable asset, and they would do everything they could to recover them when they could. And it was news when they did. Because there was a different kind of news when they weren't recovered and when they were taken as POWs. So it was important in order to get the media there, because a lot of what was happening in Vietnam at the time was an extension of how the media saw it and how it was reported. That was our first televised war. And so a lot of it was media driven, and the military learned right away that it was important for them to manage the media, and this is one of those events that they would have done that.
John Bobbitt wants to know about Copper.
What about Copper? What's the question?
Where is her search area, and who is she?
Copper is an average all-American searcher from Alaska. Her search area is in Wyoming, other than Yellowstone, and she has a degree. What did she say her degrees were in?
Oh, gosh. Environmental stuff.
Yeah, complex degrees. She works for a company that provides chemicals and equipment for the oil pipeline and oil drilling crews. So I invited her on because I had seen her commentary on The Hint of Riches, and I thought she had kind of a mellow perspective on this. So I thought it was a good get for us. She will be on the panel. She's been invited to join us as a panel member on future panels, because we have a bunch of those. They don't always appear every week, but you will see her as a panelist on future panels.
Minotaur is quoting from Ezra Meeker's The Old Oregon Trail, writing at the Devil's Gate, where he lost his brother to drowning in the Sweetwater River 50 years earlier.
That's not a question.
I wonder why those wild roses grow there where nobody will see them. Why these sparrows' nests? Why did this river go through this gorge? These questions run through my mind. I know not why. So he's saying, I'm guessing that Fenn is writing this in that same vein as a memorial to the people who died in Vietnam.
Toby's new nickname to Mitzi.
Oh.
Toby's new nickname is Sweet Legs. Thanks.
Well, that's not bad. It could be worse.
Could be Tidy Whities. I'll take Sweet Legs over Tidy Whities anytime. I'm sure Fenn thought long and hard if he wanted to go into the chest. Why would he want the bracelet back? We don't. So, Cherry, what I'm about to express to you is our opinion. The fact that he wanted the bracelet back was an afterthought. The first time it came up was at the Moby Dickens book signing, and we, in our opinion, he had time to contemplate the fact that he had to figure out a way to let it be known that the chest had been recovered. While the bracelet does have a certain amount of importance to him and personal value to him, I think he realized at that point, because it had never come up. That was 2013. That was three years after he had buried the treasure. The suggestion that he needed some kind of validation that the treasure had been recovered had not come up before then. So I don't know necessarily that the bracelet is any more important to him in terms of artifact value than any other piece in that treasure. I think it came up as a reason, as a reasonable, contrived, and I don't mean that in a negative way, as a reasonable, contrived reason to let people know that the treasure had been recovered. So if he were to say to you, this bracelet is really important to me, so I'd like it back, well, that's a good way. If you wanted the bracelet, don't put it in the treasure chest, right? So I don't think. I think that's our opinion on the matter. The truth is, like you, I don't know any more than anyone else.
You know what Eric is saying? Speaking of Vietnam, Adrian Cronauer passed away.
Oh, he's the Good Morning America guy.
Oh, Good Morning Vietnam.
I'm sorry, Good Morning America. Good Morning
That's
Vietnam.
the one that Robin Williams did.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. We woke up to him every morning. Well, I won't say every morning. And
then he gives the information about the epitaph where it can be found in the smart set.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for letting us know that, Eric.
Yeah. He's like the Wikipedia of Fenn.
Of Fennistery.
Ministry.
Shane McLaughlin.
Fennistery.
Let's see. He hasn't been back to the Madison River since his last visit. How do you interpret the unintended clue? Well, I think he confused matters when he suggested that the unintended clue was actually the map, the benchmark map that had been put in the back of Too Far to Walk, ending in Canada, because he said something about it, and you'll have to go back to Moby Dickens for his exact words. So I'm not convinced that he believes the conversation about his walking the Madison was necessarily the unintended clue. We don't. I don't want to muddy it up even further. We to this day do not believe we know exactly what the unintended clue in Too Far to Walk was. We take him at his last word, and that is that the unintended clue was that the map did not extend. The drawing of the map did not extend up into Canada, that it halted at the Canadian border.
Jeff says that part of Yellowstone is closed because of a new fissure.
A new what?
Fissure.
Oh, from the volcano? Ugh, Book of Eli, baby. Book of Eli.
Alrighty then. John Bobbitt is encouraging people to hit the super chat button.
Just like he does. Thank you, John
That's right.
Bobbitt. Thank you for not only suggesting it, but thank you for your contribution.
Cherry says, how far do you think Fenn walked from his car to the hiding spot twice?
We think under, so roughly estimated under 1,000 feet, 45 minutes to an hour. So, okay, Eric is answering her in a different way.
A 10-foot crack opened up in Yellowstone. Nothing to worry about, apparently.
Okay, okay.
Wait, and then he says, 100 foot. Wait, what? Which one?
Roxanne. Isn't that the Police? I love that song. Roxanne. Number 10 GI. You're number 10 GI. That's how they say it. You're number 10 GI. Me number 1. You love me, TT. I love you, beaucoup. You want the boom boom 500p?
Okay, that we've been through Toby's.
And I spoke
Hall girl speak, I guess.
And I spoke Vietnamese going up to Mitzi there at number 10. Okay, we're at the end, so that's the last of it, starting right there. Not a question.
He wants to know why we don't think the treasure's in Montana.
It's not that we don't think it's in Montana, it's that we think that it's in New Mexico.
And yes, we have looked at it upside down and saw that people think that that looks like Montana.
Yeah, yeah.
We also see pictures in the rocks.
We don't. So at some point in this search process, each searcher has to make a decision about where they believe the treasure is. We believe the treasure is in New Mexico. That does not, and because we haven't recovered it, we don't know anymore that it's a lottery, right? So you pick your numbers and we'll pick our numbers. If you think it's in Montana, then do yourself the favor of satisfying that part of you and searching in Montana. We don't tell people it's not in Montana. We say we search in New Mexico.
The quote police. Shane's quoting himself.
Oh, okay. Man alone.
Mitzi said that's not allowed, and he says the quote police aren't here. So
yeah, right. You'll take care of it. Thank you for taking care of that, Mitzi.
Toby, you number 1 GI in my book, says Mitzi.
Thank you. I got malaria from it, and I don't know how much you guys know about malaria, but you carry it the rest of your life to the extent that you can't donate blood.
Not that you could anyway. All the drugs you take.
They aren't those kinds of drugs. They're drugs that are prescription.
He's old. He takes a lot of pills.
Richard was stationed at Nakhon Phanom in Thailand. There's an air base out of there.
There are 3 paragraphs on my page 95. What? I didn't read them. I didn't write them because I didn't feel like they were as pertinent as the ones. I don't always.
Yeah, we don't
even usually read as much as we did today. I usually just pick out certain things. I actually read a lot more than we normally do. Page 95 was just kind of a wrap up. It wasn't any new information, so I didn't include it in the reading today.
Yeah, just because we didn't read it doesn't mean it doesn't exist in our book. So our page 95 is just like yours. Is it fair that no one recalls where the brave French soldiers fell, etc., etc.? So our book is not different. We just pick and choose what we decide to read. Yeah. Toby, what number page are the omegas in the book? I don't know. That's a question for DeCall, isn't
it? Right.
Let's see. So they are the equivalent. It's not numbered, but they are the equivalent of page 148 in my copy.
Very, very back.
Yeah, the last printed page. Yeah, Jimmy Fast has the same thing. Hey, Jimmy, I hadn't seen you earlier. Good afternoon from Texas. I do. AGK, do you find any relevance to the fact that the silver bracelet is the only silver in the chest? I do not know for certain that it's the only silver in the chest, Davio. Is my sense of what he put in the chest were the things that were important to him. And I think somebody asked earlier, do I think he put his medals in his chest? I think each one of us treats our medals differently. There was a point at which they weren't important to me anymore. They were more important to my nephew. I get the sense that Fenn is not the same. I think he still has his medals in a shadow box or a dresser drawer someplace. I don't think he would have given those up for any reason.
No, no, Mitzi. Toby doesn't do marijuana. He wasn't. He was in the intelligence community much too long to get involved in anything.
Yeah. So I'm probably the only guy. I won't say my only guy. I'm probably one of the few people my age who you knew who survived that period from the 1960s on that has never literally smoked grass. And the reason is I had at the time for most of my life I had a top secret crypto clearance and I couldn't afford to lose it.
Yeah.
Didn't want to.
Yeah. And a lot
And
of
now I'm
people
just-
have
now I'm just-
clearances or jobs where they'd get fired if they were
Yeah.
randomly drug tested, like my husband, who works at for an airline, and I used to work for the same airline, and we get drug tested, so we couldn't. None of that.
So Steve
though it's
Rampell
legal in some
asks,
states.
if you don't mind me asking, what is your email? We use gypsieskiss@gmail.com, Steve. And we recommend that if for whatever reason you didn't get a question answered, just send it to that address and I'll answer it for it as I get around to it. Unknown searcher is running late. Well, that's because we don't know. You won't tell us
It's
where you
the
are.
middle of the day.
Yeah, it's the middle of the day.
It's okay.
AGK, we're going to have to convince you guys to spend a week in Yellowstone and do a set of specials.
If we get enough super chat, we go. We go. You guys
Just
raise up the money and we'll
pack
go.
that super chat and we'll go to Yellowstone.
That's right.
So I had told Cynthia and I had a conversation about this, and I think I'm going back to Yellowstone not as a searcher, but as a tourist. So I'm thinking about September. I may go back there for a couple of days just to say I've been there. So I'll shoot a lot of photos or make some video.
Just in time for that mountain to blow up, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you could be at ground zero and
Book of Eli.
not have to experience the fallout afterwards.
Okay, so we're going on to chat now, guys. So let me close up that one. I'll just bring up
Book
that
of Eli,
window.
Book of Eli,
Book of
Book of Eli.
Eli.
You sound like a parrot.
No, well, that's every
Yeah, you
time
do.
somebody brings up that Yellowstone thing, that's what I'm reminded of. Oh, that's my coffee. Let's see, where do we want to go? We want to go to
Book of Eli.
Book of Eli, the Book of Eli. So this set of hints, clues, has nothing to do with the Book of Eli.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Toby.
it's time for the giveaway.
Okay, you guys know the rules. Jimmy Fast. So answer in the comments box below after the video is processed. Do not answer in the chat. We don't count answers in the chat, and then you just give it away to somebody who gets to the comments box below before you do. Only your first guess entry counts. You can't just keep answering your first
If you
one.
make a boo-boo on it, you can edit it.
Yeah, you could actually edit it. I don't know whether it changes the time, though. Does it actually change the time?
I
to
don't
the edit?
know.
I don't know that. So,
But that's like somebody last week wrote something and then he was like, oh no, I shouldn't have said that way. I should fix that, but he couldn't fix it.
did
It
I
was
give
too
you the
late.
prize?
But
Oh.
he could have edited it. And if he had still been before someone else then.
Okay, so new winners only, period. No old winners of anything, because we want new winners to start winning. 6-hour time limit from the end of today's show, and I won't post the winner until then. And then you must be a subscriber to win, so be prepared to prove that you are a subscriber. What we're giving away today is a laser cut of San Isidro, one of my daughter Sean's retablos. And it has the explanation of who San Isidro is and why he gets his own retablo. In the iconography of the Spanish Colonial Art Society, there are only 256 saints that they're allowed to paint. So when they do something, when you see something like Our Lady of Guadalupe, that isn't a traditional Spanish colonial saint.
Or La
No.
Conquistadora.
La Conquistadora is not either, but she does both of those at special request. And then none of the Muerto imagery is allowed either. So, and then a copy of Aunt Lucy's cookbook, and in there you will find the infamous fudge. Is it on the last
It's the
page?
last page, yeah. Yep.
There's
Peanut
a
butter
peanut
fudge.
butter fudge recipe that in 40 years I haven't gotten
I'm
to work.
going to take it to
So-
show it to my aunt and my mom this weekend and see if they can figure out what's wrong with that recipe, and then we'll fix it.
We'll fix it, and I'll make it. I'll give you the corrected.
My aunt used to own a bakery, and not only did they do bakery items, but they also did candies and bars, so she'll probably be able to figure it out.
So I shot the photographs on this back in the 70s, so I'll sign it for you, and you'll have a signed copy of Aunt Lucy's cookbook. Aunt Lucy can't sign it because she's not with us anymore. Okay, you guys ready? Get your.
Ready.
Okay, here we go. You get 5 seconds, and then of course you can look at the video after it's published. Ready? 3, 2, 1, and. Okay.
That was fast.
Yeah.
Zip.
Zippity doo dah.
Zip boom.
All right. That's all I got.
All right. So just as a reminder, I have a show this evening at 7 o'clock. We're going to be doing live from the softerside.me, and Toby and I will be talking about what women want. Boom, boom, 50p. Toby might even show us that card trick. Got him in good stead with those ladies.
It's a really good card trick. One good card trick, one good joke, and one good song on the guitar.
Yeah, and he can do all of that. So we'll have him trot out his little gifts for us eventually. But be there tonight and subscribe now if you're not subscribed yet, the softerside.me. And tomorrow we'll have It's All About You, and our special guest, are we going to tell him who it is?
No, it's a surprise.
It's a surprise, but look for that to come out at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.
That's a video, not a live stream.
And I know some people were complaining that our searchers were from too far away. We need somebody closer. So this one is closer than Tokyo or France, or Italy, I should say, Italy. So be looking for that to come out tomorrow. Spending the weekend with my mom in Arizona. So Toby's on his own this weekend.
Flea market, baby. So I did my spring cleaning. My garage is filled. I do this every year. My garage is filled with all the things that I don't find useful anymore.
So I go through it, and then I say, I want this and that, and you can take the rest.
And then I do the flea market, and what I don't sell at the flea market, I drive over to Goodwill. So it's my way of cleansing. This is
That's right.
One of those
we talked about that in my show, why he was doing that. Yeah. So thank you for being here today. We appreciate all your questions and comments in the chat. And for Gypsy Kiss, the book club, I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Thanks for joining us today. We will see you next Tuesday. Have a good weekend.
Bye.